In the last video, I left off talking about the requirements of healing and walking in the trust that God has given you in order to receive more trust. God is not promoting you. He is not going to promote you because you didn't like the duties he gave you. You're not going to be like, well, maybe I need another duty like Nacho. He's going to heal you. He's going to cause you to walk in the authority he's given you. Then you can serve in his house when you've proven worthy of a trust. Paul already told you have to prove worthy of a trust. Paul already told you cannot be an overseer if you are not above reproach, questionable behavior. If you are not above questionable behavior, you cannot be an overseer. You cannot manage God's house if you have not been managing your own house. Sure does bring a lot of question into what's going on in counterfeit Christianity, doesn't it? The fact that people, that pastors can argue. I had a professor in graduate school who was a Baptist pastor, and the church turned on him because he was trying to defend his position of getting a divorce and marrying one of his students. What? Like, if you get a divorce, you are to remain single. You don't get to get a divorce and then justify yourself and be like, well, I didn't like her. You're denying the sovereignty of God. You're denying the power of God, that if both of you return to him, then he will bring you into agreement. He will bring you into unity by his Spirit. How are you going to go do that? No, you don't get to do that. But you know, the thing is, like, the congregation should recognize that these things are happening. But these churches are not true anyway. They use the image of the cross, counterfeit Sabbath, Saturday and Sunday. You have to ask yourself, on a fundamental level, listen to me. You have to ask yourself, where in the world did you get Sunday and Saturday from? Where did you get that from? If it's not in the Bible, where'd you get it from, guys? These are Roman days, Roman Gregorian calendar. From where did the Antichrist originate? The Antichrist kingdom? Rome. The harlot Catholic Church. And then the prostitutes that bore out of her. And then the false prophet. And then the false prophet created the image of the Antichrist. Fake Israel. Fake holy days. Christmas, Easter. Fake tithing. Excuse me, Jesus was crucified. Tithing was part of sacrifice. The structure of a counterfeit church where you submit to a priest and his gospel? Why would you need a priest to tell you a gospel that God already told you in John 4 you are to worship and receive from him in the spirit and truth? Don't call anyone rabbi? Why are you guys doing this messianic blah, blah, blah? What is all that? Nothing. It's nothing. I don't care what you name it. I don't care what boxes you're checking, a rule for this, a rule for that, all these little traditions, and you think there's some power in a language and in numbers. What's the matter with you? Where are you getting that? Do you realize that it's hard enough to live out the covenant that God has actually set out without you adding all of this garbage? Get in the right standing. Go return to him individually. You must become a witness, which means he must build a testimony, a lampstand in you on which he's going to place his light, to which he's going to testify. You must receive from him. It's my job to share my testimony, and that's what any priest or pastor or any co-laborer in the body should be doing. But that's not what they're doing. They're not sharing their testimony. They're lording a bunch of doctrines and rules over you, the same way the leaders and teachers of the law were doing previously. Or they're seducing you with a bunch of lies about a gospel that is so far from the truth that, like, you just sit here and you wait for Christ to come pick you up, that he wants to give you abundance. And then they bring in their false prophets to speak a blessing over you. Anybody stop to think that, like, if you're connected to God, if you're in the covenant, God will speak that blessing to you directly? Anybody stop to think that none of God's prophets in the Word ever did that? That they came here to warn and call you into repentance? Because, like, that's why God has to raise those prophets, because you're not listening to him. That's what he said to Ezekiel. No one cares about the truth. God had to bring Babylon out of me. And as he did that, he caused me to live it out in front of you. And it was really hard because in the beginning I thought, well, I'm your servant. Aren't I supposed to be setting a good example? I'm supposed to be perfect, right? Like, I'm not supposed to have all this garbage in me. As time went on, I had to realize, oh, You said come out of Babylon. You never said, the only one who's ever been perfect is Jesus. Even Paul was talking about Peter. You know, Peter had to live out this issue that he was having of being afraid of the Gentiles, of the uncircumcised group. And he had to come back and admit, I was wrong about this. Now I realize there's no favoritism. There's neither Jew nor Gentile in the kingdom of God. Well, God has made me do that over and over and over and over and over. All the false doctrines that I prostituted myself to, He has required me during this ministry to be cleaned up in front of you in order to demonstrate that this is what must happen in you. It's not just me. He says to all of us to come out of Babylon. That if we don't come out of Babylon, we're going to bear under plagues. So he's made me to be a spectacle, just like Paul said. Seems to me, we apostles have been put on display like a spectacle, like one at the end of the procession, condemned to die in the arena. You understand the position of God's servants? Do you actually want this? Because I think some of you are nuts, thinking that you're going to show up and you're going to live a different kind of covenant. You'll be a different kind of servant, right? You're not going to suffer. When the fire comes, you can hardly stand the things he's doing with you as an individual. You don't even conceive of the fact that you have to bear your family, that you have to bear the responsibilities that he's given you, that you're going to suffer for that. And then once you're brought into his house to serve, you're going to suffer even more because now you're suffering for his body. You guys have no idea what you're doing when you start setting yourself up. He's had to clean me up, and he's done it in front of you so that you will know. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for you to not do it, and there's no excuse for you to not know what is required. He has continued to show me my sin, what I sold myself to, even that which I thought was good, causing me to leave my career and have no livelihood. I even thought that the reason I gained my wealth at one time was because he was going to use it. But he has really, what I could have done was I could have sold the building. I could have sold my house. I could have gone and bought something outright. I could have brought my kids into that home, wherever we wanted to live. And we could have lived very comfortably. He didn't cause me to do that. He had me doing things that the world would say were squandering to continue to pay for that building that he used in order to demonstrate caring for his house, restoring his house, cleaning it up, healing it, then keeping foreigners uncircumcised in heart out of it and trusting that he would continue to protect that house because no one was there to guard it. He has used this house in every way, that building, to teach me how to take care of his house. I didn't make any money off of it. I paid everything I had into it. What do you think he's demonstrating? The world would say that's squandering, and they wouldn't understand it. And they would think, you're an absolute fool. What in the world did you do? You're now homeless, living in your children's house. We're sleeping on the couch. Now you've been upgraded to sleeping in your 2-year-old grandson's bed. You are a pathetic mistake. That's what the world would think. That's what the world does think. Some of you on this channel think that. You don't want this. You don't actually want this. God caused me to walk away, to abandon that building ultimately. You're going to abandon this building. I talked about it on the channel. You're going to abandon this building because I am getting ready to abandon my house. What am I going to do? Hold on to the money? No, my kids need the money. My kids need the money. I'm going to die, but my kids need the money. Of course I would think about my kids. But should I think about my kids at the expense of what God's telling me to do? Should I say, no, that's more important? That I leave them something? No, you're telling me to do this. You gave it to me for the purposes of what you required me to do with it. And you required me to not be attached to it, to not try to take anything from myself. You required me to put up my own home, to save your house, to continue to pay the mortgage on something I was receiving nothing from. It's not a smart financial investment, is it? I made lots of smart financial decisions in my life. That's why I was able to buy a house in a wealthy area and a building. And God caused me to leave both. I get that you don't understand it, but stop relying on your own understanding and go to God and hear the things that I'm saying. Hear the things that he built in me. Hear the signs that he has established in doing that. He told me in 2020 to save one of the units on my property because I had 2 units on my property at my home. 2 homes, to save one of those homes for my family. I didn't know what that meant in 2020. I didn't know my children were both getting their doctorates. They weren't going to move back home with mom. They were moving on in their own lives. So I kept the house empty. I didn't rent it. I didn't try to make money. You know what? At this point, would it have even mattered if I made money on it? Whatever money, whatever equity that I made in the wages of prostitutes, God has returned to prostitutes as the wages of prostitutes, okay? So the money isn't the issue. He has caused me to completely separate from money, from my idolatry of money, from every way that I even have thought about money and saving and all of this stuff. God has the ability to provide, to make things show up. He also has the ability to make them disappear. God gives, God takes away. You're required to use what you have for Him, for His will. This is also what God was doing with early Christians and what you should be doing right now, because that's an example to you of no poor being among you. If you've been given something, much is required of you. You have to go use what you've been given for the kingdom of God. You have to use it correctly. But you're not. You're not. You guys have heard the things that I've suffered on this channel, and some of you have shown up to help. But most of you haven't. And that's fine. I'm not asking you for anything now. It's fine as far as I'm concerned. It's despicable as far as God's concerned, because you didn't have any concern for the one you were eating from. You didn't have any concern for me. And the reason why is because you didn't have any concern for God and what your responsibility is and what you've been demonstrated through the example of early Christians. That there are to be no poor among you, that you are to sell everything you have and give to the poor, and that everything was provided. No one had too much and no one had too little, but you're not willing to give up having too much, are you? You think that's yours. You think it belongs to you. So what will happen if you hold back and you lie to the Holy Spirit, as Ananias and Sapphira did? What will happen to you? Well, what happened to them? They dropped dead. Give God His rights. He's redeemed you. He's purchased you with His blood. If that's what you believe, you better give Him His rights. I'm not going to be here the next 3.5 years. You guys had better take care of each other. You had better learn from the mistake that you made with me and take care of each other. God tested me by having me do things that I would never have done. Continue to pay a mortgage on a building that I wasn't using? Come on. No. I was ready to sell that building. I was ready to sell my house. I provided for a devil who has known. He has watched everything from even before I was on this channel, watched everything, lived off of my provision, and then left me. This was not an intimate relationship, by the way. It's not. God took that out of me from the very beginning when He called me to Himself. That's not. I'm not talking out of that kind of a resentment. A person who was feeding on my offering. I built them a bungalow at the building. I provided for them for 4 years. And do you know that they have not come back to see if I have anything to eat? If my basic needs have been provided for, nothing. They took off like a coward. They contributed nothing but false Christianity the entire time that they were here. And God drove them out. God drove them out of being at that building, but gave them so many opportunities. And you know why? Because He was displaying His glory through an object of His wrath to an object of His mercy. That person is destined for destruction. There is no way for them to come back. It is impossible for them to be brought into repentance. They will be destroyed. And I'll be honest with you, there were many times where I wanted that person to leave, but God has continued to teach me and continued to cause me to have those feelings, and then waited to see if that, and to warn that person, you're going to be thrown out. And then for them to demonstrate whether they're going to return to Him or not, and then be given forgiveness, be given grace, all to do it again and again and again. Everything that God has done in this situation, He has done to teach me. Everything He has done as a sign to teach me of spiritual things. It hasn't come easy. It hasn't come without suffering. And a lot of the things that He's had me do have not made sense at all to the world. And this was probably is probably the hardest part for me to share with you guys, because I know that many of you do not understand. But these were the signs that God was using in order to help me to understand what he has written in his word in the physical, in the natural, in order for me to understand the spiritual. When he told me to abandon that house that I had put so much heart and everything into, my own home, I continued to, when it came time for me to sell that building to save my home, he said to me, I'm not done with the building. And I was like, yeah, but if I don't sell the building, I'm going to lose my home. Okay, I'll obey you. I'll trust in whatever you're doing. And he did cause me to lose my home. He caused me to lose it anyway. That has been really difficult to swallow. But along the way, he's performed miracles. And when he had me leave that building that day, and he said to me, you're going to go to the building today and you're going to say goodbye. You're going to abandon this house because I'm getting ready to abandon my house. And I was like, Lord, I put so much into this. My home has now been auctioned. But he had me do it. And it was so incredibly painful for me. And the thing that I was grieving the most is how much I put into this house. Just like on the channel. How much I've put into building his house and got nothing in return. Putting up my own house. I'm in a room right now for the last few hours doing videos for you while my family is out there, and I have hours before they could come and take me. Because today is the last day of my testifying. Right down to the last minute, I had put up my house for his. He had me leave the house. I was in terrible pain, thinking of everything that I put into it, everything I ever worked for, putting into this house, making it so beautiful, restoring it. And now what? The banks are just going to take it? You're going to have me abandon it? Okay, I'll do it. And everything in it, all of that. It was so beautiful. All of it. Everything that he taught me. That if I couldn't find someone who was uncircumcised in heart, that place was to remain empty. That he would continue to keep it empty. That he would not fill up his house with a bunch of people who were defiled. And now abandoning it. And I sat with him and I said, Lord, it's not too late. I still have the keys. I can go back. I can continue to take care of this house. If I've been wrong, tell me. But if I haven't, then confirm. And that is the way you are to take these things up with God. You don't act like, oh, I haven't received an answer, therefore this is what I'm going to go with. You ask him to either confirm or prove to you that this is not what he said. And then you believe that he will do that. And he led me to the scripture where Jesus says, your house is left to you desolate. Your house is left to you desolate, just before his crucifixion. What do you think God is speaking through this sign about the death of the witnesses? Your house is left to you desolate. He is getting ready to abandon his house. That's exactly what that means, that he is deserting, desolate, deserting his house. You will not be clean until his wrath against you has subsided. About a week later, I was still grieving this, and I was talking with him about it, and he said to me, you have saved your house by putting it up for mine. You've saved your house by putting it up for mine. Okay, Lord, but my house has been auctioned. Okay, Lord, but I have no money to pay for water, gas, electric, trash. I have no money. Nothing. So I'm just going to keep trusting in the things you said. You're telling me, stay in this land. Do not leave the land. Stay in the land. Oh, sounds like my grandson is throwing a little tantrum outside of the door. Okay, but I believe what you've said. And still, he's teaching me in the natural. But then ultimately, he sent me away from my house. Now I'm still holding on to this thing that he told me, that front house was for my family, which I now understand is supposed to be for my kids. But I'm outside one day cleaning off this dead clematis from the rain chain on one of the front porches. I worked so hard that day, got a bucket of soapy water and I'm soaping down the porch. I go in the back to water some fruit trees and I see hear some clanking of tools, and someone has come. I knew exactly what it was. Right when I heard it, I knew what it was. they came to shut off my water. Okay, so that's happening. I can't live without water, Lord. And in the days to come, you heard my testimony on here, that God brought water out of the pipes. You heard it. I turned every single faucet on for you to hear the water that he was bringing out of the pipes after me having not a drop of water, based on my faith. So he was teaching me. And I had to stand in things like, you brought water out of a rock. You can bring water out of pipes. You could turn that little nozzle. I mean, that would seem easier to me than bringing water out of a rock. He did it. He brought water out according to my faith. Because if I tried to, when I was getting water, start storing water, he wouldn't give me water for like a day. It was really hard to live that way, you guys. I mean, I don't know if you've ever lived without water. It was very hard. But I continue to do it because he said, do not leave the land. Stay in the land. And I continue to trust and believe in what he was saying to me, even though it was pretty crazy and there's not a single person except for my children who would ever think that I wasn't completely nuts. But for their own testimony of the nutty things that God has had them do. I begged him so many times, please just let me be with my children. Whether I'm over there or I'm over here, it doesn't matter. This is miserable. It's a miserable way to live. I visit my kids once a week. My daughter makes me some food to bring back to just be a nothing sitting in this house. What does any of this matter? What does any of the wealth, the things? What does it matter if I'm not with my kids? Please bring me with my kids. I shared with you on the first video about the Festival of Trumpets. I've shared with you my testimony as time has been going. So for some of you, this is repeat. But when the home was set to be auctioned the first time, God sent the Eaton fire, and it delayed the auction by 3 months. I want to be clear about something. This is not about me delaying and juicing every last thing that I could get out of living at that house. That's not what I was attached to. I was living miserably. I wanted to be with my kids, but God was continuing to build something in me and test to see if I was going to obey, even without water, even without, trash service, even without, things like that. Okay? So he was continuing to test me and see if I was going to obey. And in his mercy, and he brought it all the way down to like a month and a half before I go. And in his mercy, he allowed me to be locked out of that home so that I could come and be with my kids. And in the month and a half that I've been with my kids, he has purified, refined all of us as we've been here together. He's worked out some of those things that needed to be worked out. But he's also given me so much mercy and so much love to be able to share this last month and a half with my kids. I would have been heartbroken if I wasn't with them for this last month and a half. Heartbroken. I want you to recognize the ways that he delayed this for no good reason. For no good reason. The ways that he delayed me staying in that house and continued to teach me all the way up to almost the very end, and then finally relented and said, go be with your kids. He delayed the auction for 3 months. When the auction finally went through 3 months later, and my home was sold, he delayed it by another month. Even though these people went to court, they were able to exert their legal rights to kick me out of the house. He delayed it by another month, continuing to teach me so many things as I was staying there. And by the way, didn't want to stay there. Not under those conditions. I was obeying him. I was obeying what he said. And he gave me a lot of insight as to the difficulties that the Israelites were dealing with when he said, stay in the land. Because we think he gave them the land and he gave them fruit and crops, let them reap where they had not sown. What is their problem? Why don't they want to stay in the land? Why? Because there was war. And because if they had gone to Egypt, as it says in Jeremiah 42, they said things like, well, my bread will be supplied to me. But when you're living with God, you have to rely on him. You have to submit to him. And so that if he sends a famine, you know that it's because of your sin and you have to return to him. And if he is whatever it is that he's doing, if he sends a plague, you know that you have to return to him. But for those who want to go to Egypt, all of that was going to be supplied to them, because that's not the way that pagan nations lived. It was the way that he required Jerusalem to live. And so he said, stay in the land. And there were also enemies coming against them, but God delivered them every time, didn't he? And so there was a different way that they had to live. And there was a different way that I had to live. It would have been easy if I had come to live with my kids at that time and said, you know what, God's not giving me water anymore, or, you know, there's no water coming through the pipes, so I got to come over here where it's easy and I can just turn on the faucet. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for that. I mean, I like had never been so happy to wash dishes. But I had to live. He required me to live in a certain way that seems completely crazy in order to learn what he was doing with his people in the Bible. I came back from a visit with my kids. Once I had learned how to, you know, what it was that God was requiring of me with regard to the water and how to remain in that faith, I came back from a visit with my kids, and I brought my grandchild with me and expected, you know, I'd probably just go to Grandma's house. He loves Grandma's house. Go to Grandma's house for like a day and then bring him back. And as I was getting off the freeway, I heard God say to me, pray for a faith not by sight. And I thought, okay, whatever he's doing is going to be hard right now. Not excited about this, but he's doing something, and I'm going to pray for a faith not by sight, because God knows what's right, I don't. And I'm going to bring my heart wherever it is that he requires me to bring my heart. So I prayed for a faith not by sight. And the next day, there was a handwritten note. After a month of these people not exercising their right, they don't even have to write a handwritten note. They can call the sheriff and have me driven out. They don't even have to write a handwritten note. And by the way, it's not because I'm like some criminal or I have this criminal mentality or something. God told me stay in the land. That's what I was doing. I was obeying him. It was very uncomfortable for me. A handwritten note saying, please get out by Friday. So they're back after a month of hearing nothing from them. They're back telling me to get out of this house. So I'm like, this is so confusing. I mean, you can imagine what I was thinking in the month. I was sharing with you anyway on the videos. Like, where have these people gone? A month. After exerting their legal right to have me kicked out. Not even exerting their legal right to have me kicked out right now. Writing a note. Well, the Festival of Tabernacles was coming. The plan hadn't changed. God wasn't telling me anything different. And I decided to go and be with my children. Not to pack anything, even though the temptation was there. Oh, just in case, right? Just in case God isn't going to do this or whatever. Even to that very last detail, I'm not going to pack anything. I'm going to trust God that he's told me to stay in the land and he hasn't told me to pack anything. And I went and observed Festival of Tabernacles with my kids. And a big part of that theme had to do with saving that house for my kids. Yep, completely nuts. It's been auctioned, saving that house for my kids. Okay. And stay in the land. And of course, I ended up going back. And by this time I was locked out of the house. But my daughter was saying, even before I left, that she felt that message of saving that house for my kids had already been fulfilled. And so in the days to come, even though we were filled with grief and trying to understand what it is that God had done, had he deceived us, we came to understand the fulfillment, the spiritual fulfillment of saving that house. And also the spiritual fulfillment of what God says in Micah, I believe it is, that as you earned this as the wages of prostitutes, it will again be used. It doesn't negate God telling me to stay in the land. It doesn't negate all of the things that he taught me. It certainly doesn't negate the fact that he miraculously brought water out of pipes that were bone dry and took care of me while I was there. It doesn't negate any of that. You go where the Lamb goes. Follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Follow the Spirit wherever he goes. Don't lean on your understanding, no matter how bonkers, bananas, crazy it is what he's asking you to do, what he's telling you to do. And ask him for his witness. Ask him to witness to send you two witnesses by his Spirit and his truth. If you think you're hearing something from God, tell him to show you in his word. He will. You don't think it's crazy that Nebuchadnezzar was laying siege to Jerusalem when God said to Jeremiah, go and buy this land? Jeremiah asked him, he's like, you're telling me that Nebuchadnezzar has already laid siege to Jerusalem. Why are you telling me to buy land? And then God tells him why. You don't think it's insane that God told Abraham to sacrifice his child, and Abraham gets to all the way to the point of sacrificing his child, and God says, no, don't do it. Now I know that you love me. Yeah, he's going to ask you to do some nut stuff. You think Abraham went away saying, why did you deceive me? We can't do that. We have to lean into everything that he's doing and everything he's teaching. And that he does things his way. I saved my house by putting it up for his. My children have been brought into that house. And I want to tell you something, because I know a lot of you are hurting over your children. But you're partly hurting over your children because you have not healed. You have not gone to God to be healed so that you could actually be of use to your children. And that's the only way that you're ever going to be of use to your children, is to be healed yourself. You will not save your house unless you put it up for his. You're going to have to give up everything for him. In the last days of my life, God has been separating me, circumcising me from everything that remained, including the life that I had planned for my children at that house, the play area that I built for my little grandson, the toys that I bought in love as he was growing in my daughter's belly. Every memento that my daughter ever had, every photo album that was left after the fire. I mean, we'd already been stripped down. But you know what my daughter said? We know what it's like to lose everything in a fire. It's okay. None of this stuff matters. And those people are walking into my home seeing the giant picture of my grandson in the living room. I don't know what I was thinking, but honestly, that is the biggest picture I've ever seen of a little kid. So they're seeing that. They're seeing our handprints together, that we photocopied on the printer. Little notes, footprints. The wickedness of people who covet other people's homes. To be able to buy a house, a $1.5 million house, in cash. Certainly they didn't pay that, but I think they paid something in the $800,000 range because it was auctioned. Anybody who has cash like that does not belong to God. That is so incredibly wicked. And to covet someone's house, they don't know who I am. I wouldn't want to be them when they find out what I've been doing for God and how I lost that house. And as I've taken these things up with him, it was hard not to feel like someone else had stolen from me, someone else had taken from me everything that I ever had. But God has given me full confidence that he will plunder those who plunder us. And in fact, in a manner of speaking, we will plunder those who plunder us, because everything they have will be given to us. He's already said that. I've had to separate myself from everything. And even right down to the fact that my daughter had just bought dog food and toilet paper in order for me to live out the last month and a half of my life. With what little she has, she's maxed out on her credit card. They can only pay the minimum balance. But my children have faithfully trudged with me, whether that be testimony, encouraging me to that finish line, paying for me, taking care of me, all of my needs. They have faithfully done that. And so it broke my heart. It broke my heart to leave all of these things that, like, now we have to buy another $45 bag of dog food and toilet paper and basic needs. Now we have to buy all of that. I had nice stuff that was there. I was saving, towels, kitchen towels that I had bought previously that were brand new, so that when my children moved in, they had these brand new kitchen towels. I mean, things like that. But nice things that I had at my house that I was saving that I would have brought over here if I had thought that I was coming over here. But see, God has a different plan. And he doesn't want me being attached to nice things that I make to be idols, that in any way could potentially be an idol. He's required me to separate from everything, even in these last hours of my life, to separate from my children, to go home and to trust him that he's going to take care of my children during the hardest time in history, so that I can't even have a glimmer of self-idolatry in needing to stay here to take care of them. shrinking from death, as it says in Revelation 12. And God says that we will be blessed 100 times as much for leaving houses, fields, and families for his sake. I can confidently say to you, now at this point, at the end of my life, I have left all three. I have left all three for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. I have been circumcised from all of it by God, and it wasn't anything that I could have possibly done. With man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. He has caused me to lose everything and not look back. Everything I ever worked for and not look back. And it's not as though I didn't work for it. This journey has not been what I could have imagined. But there's nothing more biblical than what I have been through, what he has taken me through. He caused me to leave everything, to sell everything I had, so to speak, in order to gain the treasure, even to the point of homelessness. And even to the point now, which is, I think, the hardest thing that I have done yet, which is to separate from my children and my grandchildren, to leave them knowing what they're going to go through, or at least knowing what Jesus said, which is this is going to be that last 45 days is going to be a time of distress such as the world has never seen. Knowing what I'm seeing on the news with activists, with the families of those being detained by ICE, with the children of those being detained by ICE. And yet we're all picking this up. My daughter, my gentle, tender daughter, is crying to me and telling me that she's scared for her children. And you know what it reminded me of yesterday? It reminded me of Rahab putting her life on the line, putting her safety on the line in order to hide the spies on the roof. She has put herself, and her husband has put himself in a position that they don't even know, just in a position to trust God with whatever he's doing, because they know what I've been doing. They've not abandoned me. They've trudged with me. They have put their own house up for God's house. You understand the metaphor? And now they know that they are going into a position where they're going to do the very things that they saw me doing the last 3.5 years, which is to work with people and for them, and to serve people who don't stay, who don't care, who are insincere. And my daughter was telling me last night, I don't want to work with people who don't care, who are just going to leave. It's been so hard every time someone left. But they're going to do it. They're going to do it. Some of you think that because you sent me some kind of gift, that that's your way of helping a prophet. It's one way of helping a prophet. And I want you to hear the ways that my children have helped a prophet. They have put their house up for the kingdom of God, for God's house. They sacrificed living paycheck to paycheck to feed me and to house me, and they haven't complained not once. They haven't made me feel like a burden. You know, when I was staying on the couch in the living room, I was like trying to, fix things so that it didn't, my daughter could at least feel like she had a home. You know what she said to me? Mom, you're not a burden. You don't need to shrink yourself down to make me more comfortable. Just take the space that you need. They've put themselves in danger for me to trust God and what he's doing, even down to this last moment where they don't know what's going to happen tonight. And truthfully, we don't know if it's going to happen tonight, if it's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know when it's going to happen. My sense is that God is going to do it sooner than later. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't once these things have been completed, and there's a 7-year period. There's not much time in between the 1260th day to the 1290th day in a 7-year period. But we don't know. We don't know anything. That is helping a prophet, and they will receive a prophet's reward. I'm going to end the video here, and I'll go ahead and split this up into another video. Please discern this message with God.